I think that right now it's never been easier to get rich, and it's also never been easier to be left in the dust and just be like, how are all these people making money? I don't even, like, I'm making $2,000 a month or so, like, it just be left behind. And so I think, so the reason I bring that up is because I think since everyone does have the resources to attain some level of wealth, that's why I wanted to talk about what you think the 5 skills are to be successful in these times, because it is kind of a transition period. There's a lot of stuff that we can take advantage of. And so, I mean, I got a couple, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well, of like, what specific skills for right now can we be using to attain some level of wealth?
We had a previous conversation about this, right? I mean, you were talking about what content we were going to have for today. So you sent me over to that, and I thought, and I either boil it down to 3 things or 5 things, right? Beyond that, I mean, if I get a list of 10, man, I've really put a lot of thought to it. But I've been thinking along those lines right now. And so I don't know if you wanted me to actually go through the 5 or if you want to hit what you're talking about. But
go ahead and go through them.
I jotted a couple things down, and I actually made a couple notes to the side of that, thinking, hey, because I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've been trying to think outside the box, right? There's so I think there are 2 skill sets. One is the one that never really quite changes, right? Like integrity, truthfulness, being honest to yourself, being, those types of things, right? That are base things that I think they'll help you in whatever, right? Yeah. So I've been trying to look past those, right?
The basic ones.
Attributes that are there that maybe tied to skill-oriented, 2 things that you could do and enhance it. So I came up with 5. The first one's adaptability, right? That maybe goes without saying. To be able to be that is a skill. It's a quality, right? And I've actually, at times in my life, have been better at adapting, and there's times I'm like, whoa, I'm like Ford, right? I'm adapted to this stuff, but let's let them paint their car any way they want as long as it's black. Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, that's all we're going to offer. It's too confusing, you know. What I mean? So and he paid for that, right? I mean, the other General Motors, and those other companies gained ground because of that. He wasn't adaptable. Yeah. On some of those things, he just got too stuck in a rut.
He was adaptive at first with the car, but then once he was set in his ways, he wouldn't adapt to the different colors or
he had a hard time with a lot of that after that. He was a huge innovator and what he was a master at, right? It could have been cars. He did it with tractors as well. He could put that assembly line together. That was his real skill, right? He just happened to make cars and tractors. His son, during World War II, they ended up making those planes as well. And then they got out of the business because it was a little sketchy. Yeah. And then the planes took off like crazy, the consumer business and stuff like that. But so the notes I made on that one with adaptability is it's vital. You got current, and because we always have to be thinking future, right? Nothing's moved. It's never moved this fast, at least that we have record of, right? What you could be, where he had to run Ford for several years, and it took him several years to kind of lose that footing, right, to them. It still was not like, there's no chat GPT this year, last year, and now we're at 4 point, you know what I mean? Because it was in December, and we're having this thing. So I think you got to be able to look down the road and say, hey, not only am I trying to be adaptable, it's like, what's coming, right? Yeah. So I thought that was a big thing. Yeah,
well, even like, I think you have to think in terms of like, okay, where are we going to be in a month, 6 months, a year? Yep. And I don't think you really had to do that before. Even like 5 years ago, it wasn't like things changed by the month. But I feel like now it's like every month there's like a new tool you can use, or like a new little thing that's come out to make your life a little bit more efficient, or something that's just gives you that much more productivity. That like if you're staying on top of stuff, you can really maximize your productivity, which was actually one of mine. I interrupted you, but that was mine. It's like
no interruption.
Is finding the way to be like efficient. Efficiency is like such a key factor in attaining any success, whatever success is for you, whether that's maximizing your time you're spending with your family, like, oh, let me figure out a way so I can only work 2 hours a day, but be so efficient in those 2 hours that I get 10 hours with my wife, or whatever it is. Whatever you're maximizing for, you want to figure out how to be the most efficient. I think right now there's never been a better opportunity. Like there's so many little widgets and gadgets and AI tools and softwares and all sorts of stuff where you can really become efficient if you look into it.
Yep, and it goes back, what do you want to spend that extra time with? I think that's something to be adaptable as well, because quality time is still what people want, right?
Yeah.
So you get home, you are really efficient throughout the day, and you're still on your phone. Hey, we had this many likes, subscribes, right? It's hard not to check that stuff.
Yeah.
And you're checking in on that. That's one side of it. Then you're getting emails, right?
Yeah.
And people wanting responses. And if you're really efficient, then you can get that done tomorrow morning. But if I find myself still looking at that, and I'm not totally present, you know, and that's all my grandson and my wife and my kids want. Like if they're there, they don't want me checking my phone. I don't want them checking theirs, right?
Yeah.
So that quality time of aloneness is almost like that adaptability, right? Because even in a day's time, you got to take on all these things that make you productive. And then when you get there, you got to be present and adaptable to shift from being this high efficient machine to, hey, just there. Hey, what do you need? You know, let me scratch your back. Let me do that. You know what I mean?
Or even like you have to find ways to like figure out when is the time to be that way, in a sense. Like that's part of that adaptability, like you were just saying, where it's like you got to be efficient here, but also you have to categorize and prioritize your time, where it's like, is this an email where if I don't get to, then it's going to be really bad? Or is this something that I can brush off till the morning? And you have to categorize your time like that all the time, which is constantly adapting, especially if you're in an entrepreneurial position. I mean, 100% of your time is being managed like by yourself. You don't have a place where you just go clock in. Once you're clocked out, you don't even have to think about it again. And so I think that's like one of the biggest things if you're trying to go on an entrepreneurial path.
I think that's for sure. And so adaptability and to manage that whole process of it. And the different requirements for each one. It's like you said, like I found, like, hey, if I don't answer this email, it might cause me more problems. It's going to take me away from my family, like bigger things I'm doing. I found myself, people, as long as I check sometimes in with them, like they've sent me an email, I've got their phone number too, I'll text them and say, look, I saw your email, I'm not available to do it. So something quick like that. But there's some nights there's like 20 of those. At least I feel like, right? I mean, I've got this time. So that's the tough thing for, I think, all of us to do. So adaptability was the one, not just technology. I had to put technology literacy, right? There's so much technology out there. And I had it down in 3 areas that were like, I don't know how to code, right? So for whatever reason, I kicked out these 3 things in my head. It's like to be able to code, and then there's people like to be able to analyze the data. I feel like I can analyze the data pretty good. I've got a pretty, where I don't know how to code, right? To make things and write things and have that happen within the technology. I'm more of like a person that can take the technology. I'm a little slow in maybe trying to get some of the stuff, but I can interpret it pretty well. Sometimes that's what information you're given, but I think that's a huge part. Like, is this the trend that's going to be here? Like you were just saying, you have to think 1 month, 3 months, 6. Is this a trend that's going to be here for a long time? We've said this many times on the show. I've heard other people saying, I think YouTube's here to stay. But YouTube evolves, right? YouTube came out with shorts.
You got to adapt within the platform. You have to adapt to the platforms, and then once you're on the platforms, you have to adapt within the platforms.
We found that if we're on Facebook, it can maybe drive more real estate business to us that way. Appear to be an expert, do the things that we're trying to do that way to do it. And it might drive people to our YouTube channel, right? Because YouTube is the one that's going to be around forever. I think Facebook's going to have some form. They're trying to stay around forever too, right? But they all have a little different niche. Like you're saying, how do you interpret that? How do you use it to benefit you, right?
Well, I think that's one of the skills. That's one I was going to bring up was there is just content creation / social media. I don't really know how you would categorize it without one or the other. But I think knowing, it was kind of like you brought up the different types of technology. I think content creation is a whole different type of technology in and of itself, because there's people that know technology very well,
Yeah.
but would have no idea about lighting, about what camera to buy, about microphones, anything.
Yeah.
But yet they could code an entire software program or something, you know, like they
Yeah.
know technology, but they don't know this technology. And so I think there's different avenues you can go down. And I think there are very specific, like the skill that I think is going to be the most profitable down the line is that content curation and like knowing, not even like the business side of it, but like knowing the ins and outs of social media and how to like almost format social media, if that makes
So
sense.
this is, no, it's crazy. We did not talk about this. Blake sends me kind of an outline of what we have, and then we follow that. Sometimes we get way off, but this is something that we want to talk about. That's why I actually wrote some things down on it, right? And the last thing I said, so there was 3: coding, the interpreting of data, and then I've got one here because I'm thinking out of the box a little bit because I'm using it a different way, right? Trying to put a word to something that's very different than I've looked at in the past. Social media management.
Yeah.
I came up with that. I've heard it out there.
But I don't think people really understand what that entails. Like,
I've learned a lot
people think it's like
in the
an
last little
easy
bit.
job in a sense
Yeah.
of like, because even I heard that a couple years back and I was like, what, they're just like posting for them? That's easy. But when you really get into the nitty gritty of like what works on certain platforms, what doesn't work on certain platforms, how long do I need to make the videos? When do I have words pop up? How do I edit this? What lighting do I use? What camera do I use? Like, there's so many
All the
nuances.
content is the same.
Yeah,
If you have it, right? How do you tailor it
exactly.
to where it's not going to be just like initially? See, this is a very interesting thing too. And I've learned this through you on this. We've not talked about this much, but it's like you create content that is interesting for a while, right?
Yeah.
So you put it in a format that's maybe a today topic. But if you go back and you see, people are still pretty interested in this thing, right? Because of the format, the way that it was couched,
Exactly.
the principle behind it, right? By the way that you did the title to it, right?
Uh-huh.
And all those little things that you say, how
Yeah.
you broke it up, and is it coherent to where if anybody reads, or watches a short, sort of manage that.
Yeah.
It's very, so I say that technology literacy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much technology out there.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, how do you make heads or tails of it in a business sense, right? We're running a business. I'm doing real estate. That's what
Yeah.
I do all day.
Yeah,
How do we convey that when we get talking about this stuff? Well, these are the things affecting us, right?
exactly.
How do I get my message out there of what we can do and work with these different companies? Well, we have to choose how we do that, right? So if we're poor at choosing and interpreting and
Yeah.
doing that, then it's not going to go well. We hope we're doing a better job. We're going to get better at it. And
Yeah.
So that's what I'm learning. This goes back number 3. At least I put down here, which maybe is like those original ones I said, integrity and things. It was emotional intelligence, but not. So there's 2 sides of that. The one, people get really excited about certain political things, but it's not just political, it's ideology of certain things. And I'm like, I found if you can get past some of those things, we're talking about the same damn thing.
Yeah.
Very few times are we not talking
Yeah.
specifically with somebody that would be on the opposite. I consider myself maybe more in the middle anyway, right?
Yeah, me too.
It's like some things I'm quite liberal, some things I'm very conservative, but at the end of the day, when I find I'm talking to people, we're talking about the same damn thing. We really want the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just how do you get there? Well, that's important too, right?
Yeah.
But the emotional, and that's the other part. So it's to keep yourself in emotional check and understanding. But the second part of that, which I don't think is, if you went back and you read the business books, it was very 20 years ago. To go back 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago, there were some that addressed kind of this emotional intelligence, right? You hear a lot more of it now. You have to know the way people feel and think and what's going to create emotion. I think
Yeah.
I think there's some people that are really good at that, that creates this division, right?
Yeah.
Just the way you could say it, the way you present it, the
Yeah.
way you have a flag that's either red, white, and blue or rainbow colored,
Yeah.
right? The red, white, and blue should cover the rainbow, right?
Yeah.
We live in a country, you should be able to do anything you want to do and have freedom to do it. But man, you present it a certain way, and it gets people like ready to go at it, right? Very interesting. And I've thought a lot about that. So I think if we could all adapt emotional maturity, stability, and understand that emotional intelligence, then we'll be able to first sell what we're trying to sell, right?
Yeah.
The actual, and have people feel those, okay, you know, I'm on board with this. This sounds like a good thing, but also not be offended, and but know the difference there, right? I think we could be there. So anyway, I don't know if there's, you want me to hit the other two?
No, yeah, just hit them real quick.
Real quick, critical thinking, and I just wrote solving problems effectively, making sound decisions. You know, we're talking all this stuff that's kind of abstract. Now it's like technology is coming at you. You still got to make good decisions at the time. And sometimes it's just the base decision, right? It's like we've talked about this a lot of times. Here's where we want to go.
Yeah.
And here's all these different ways of maybe getting there.
And maybe there's 5 right ways, but there's also probably a couple wrong ones.
But we're presented with we've got to do this today, right? We got to have enough money to pay for the things we're doing today to make sure it's going to go forward. If we don't do that, then we'll be like a lot of other YouTube channels where they got tired and gave up, right?
Which
right
is
before
actually
something happened.
What was one of mine was, I don't want to say it like too much, but like just consistency is like unrelenting consistency in anything. Like if you're an investor, if you just were so disciplined in just like doing the exact same thing, putting the same money into the S&P 500, you would end up wealthy when you're in your 50s and 60s. But it's people can't stay consistent with things, or they get distracted easily, which I know we probably both have a problem with ADHD. But if you can stay consistent and stay on the path that you've chosen and don't veer off of it until you know for sure that's not the path to go down, instead of trying out a lot of like veering off of the path too many times or not staying consistent with something. I think anyone who does anything consistently over a long enough period of time is going to win.
I think, well, we're part of Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett's considered maybe the greatest investor of all times. And whenever he's hit with that, it's one form or another that he's almost like chuckles. Like it's not rocket science, right? He's like, there's industries you need to be smart in, right? And he considers himself, but I just stick to my guns, right? Like we're buying companies. That's how they look at it, that he's buying companies, not just shares, right? I mean, he's literally buying the company, and it's got tons of equity, right? I mean, it's got tons. That's what they're cash. So he's like, this is crazy. Why isn't everybody doing this to some degree, right? He's considered the greatest, but that's it. And I wasn't thinking of him until you said that from that angle. He analyzes, he interprets the information. The outcome is either a go or not, right? I think that critical thinking is allows you to see innovation in a process, really. But at the same point, that's it. You still got to make decisions today, right? Every day we have to make decisions. You know, how do we spend our time? What we do, right? Time's a big one. I think a lot of people.
Time management
is a big part of critical thinking, because if you're like, I think putting things off. One thing I've found to be true for some of the great minds and business leaders, they're very quick to make decisions and they're very slow to change them. You know, and you've heard that. We hear that a lot. I think that's true. The last one, number 5 for this one, we're talking about creativity, and I've got. You got to be creative to just be competitive. So I said creativity. You almost got to be super creative.
Yeah. You
got to be thinking outside the box and looking at that box and be able to pick that box up and turn it around inside and out and set it on its side. You know what I mean? Because I've learned you don't want to be competing. You want to dominate, right? You want to be where Apple was, where they went into a thing that was already dominated. I mean, I think they said Sony had 3/4 of the market when they came out with that dang
MP3.
Yeah, what was what I call it? The iPad? No, the iPod. When they came out with that there was many different players that they had. I think Motorola had one, and there was manufacturers of the MP3 player. Sony had, you know, where it goes back, I think, even to their days where they bought all the rights to those songs, right? Back in the day from BMG, where you would sign up and get the CD sent to your home. That was before your time, too.
Yeah, I don't even.
But it was still all those rights that they had, so they dominated that side of it. But what they didn't do is merge this, you know, they had been on really a kick for years. Who would have ever thought that they would have been knocked off, right? Didn't happen in a short time period, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so, I mean, and we know Jobs, what was his biggest thing? The ability to say no, right? He had Pixar, I mean, some of the most creative companies that we've had in the last 50 years, maybe, you know, going back even to Walt Disney as far as pure creativity to churn out a product, you know?
Yeah.
And he believed it was because he could say no to all this. There's only so many things you can focus on. So let's take all that creativity and focus it on something we can totally dominate. That's what I'm trying to do. And I think that that's it. If I was going to give advice to somebody, young or old or whatever, that's my view, is not the creativity to be competitive. You got to do that, or you're not going to be competitive, right? If you're not even creative, you want to be super creative. You want to be able to see something that nobody else has seen from a little angle, right? I mean, people were still consuming the music. What's crazy to me is the downloads, right?
Yeah.
What they thought, what Sony thought was even possible to download, like in the first 2 years, Apple blew it away by so far, right? From a captive thing that you had to pay to get a subscription to iTunes, right? I mean, it was was it iTunes? What was the Apple platform? Is iTunes?
Well, it's Apple Music they have now.
Yeah, Apple Music.
Are you talking about now or back then?
I was talking back then, actually.
Oh.
That's what I was referring to. So
yeah,
I mean,
it was iTunes.
was it iTunes? Now it's Apple Music. Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, they just came. It was a platform that was dominated. You had to when they first came out, you had to have the iPod. You had to subscribe to Apple, right? And nobody was making that happen. You could still get it from lots of different sources. Sony still dominated all those sources. They could have made it so nobody ever came in.
Yeah.
And Jobs comes in within a couple of years. I mean, he blew them up, right? The whole industry totally blew up with downloads more, right?
Yeah.
And he already saw it. They you know, now we know what was going on. They saw that it was going to be movie entertainment. You know,
Yeah.
it was the beginning of what they were doing. That's why they were saying this is the Apple platform, iTunes or whatever you want to do. Now it's Apple Music, and then what do they do for their? I mean, they got
Apple
podcast
TV.
and TV, Apple TV. Yeah, of course, that's what it is. That's what it's all. Very crazy. So that's it for mine. But you know, I don't think we want to say that all these people are geniuses, and some of them are just freaking geniuses. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. You know, you're 22. I'm learning from you every day, just from the things you know. And I want to glean everything you've got, not to compete with you, but to take what we've got and make what I'm doing, right? Because you're helping me. I wouldn't be doing this. I've said this many times. If it was up to me, I would have done it 5 years ago. I wouldn't have done it 5 years from now, right?
Yeah.
We came in. I was finally to the point that's like, you know what? And it clicked. That's when it really did click. I imply that I didn't do the social media thing because those people just were talking social media. It wasn't until you came along that I said, he's the first one I know that built a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Right? You're the only one I still know, really, technically, that's done it and been successful, other than celebrity types that have done it. And I don't know who helped them. Somebody helped them along the way at some point, right? And some of it was luck when they got going because they just did it early enough, right? That platform. But at the end of the day, now we know what it takes to do it. And so we want to be super creative. We want to dominate this whole sector. We want everybody to say, we're obscure right now. Not everybody in the world knows this, but we do want to have it. Not just commercial real estate and business, touching businesses. That's why our interviews are going to be with restaurant owners and small business owners and some people that even work for those companies that have had some interesting lives with it, because that's where we glean all this. So anyway, I do appreciate it for you on that. And anything you want to end on?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please subscribe, like, forward our content to other people if you think it's worth sharing, and respond back to us. Let us know how we can make it either better or if we're doing it wrong in some way that you see and can help us make it better. We do appreciate it. Thanks very much. Have a great week.